All right, welcome to the Panican podcast. It's a Monday, April the 7th now. This is section 1904. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We're underway. Hard to believe that we are getting set for a match day 7 with MLS already. Our very successful San Diego Football Club with another impressive win over the weekend. The Padres dropped 2 out of 3. And who even knows what's happening in the world? Got a championship game in college hoops. Had a championship game in college hoops. So there's a lot going on. John G., hope you had a good weekend. How's things?
They're fine. You know, the weekend after vacation is always one of those, it's a catch-up weekend. It's not really you're not enjoying it. Despite the weather, which was absolutely beautiful, I did spend a large portion of this weekend doing chores and laundry and running errands. I think the cashier at Trader Joe's yesterday was like, "You look tired. You should get outside. It's so nice out." I'm like, I got too much stuff to do. But I'm happy. I'm happy that, the Padres pulled off a win in one of the weirdest games I've ever seen. I'm happy that STFC absolutely blew the doors off the Seattle Sounders and seemed really, really impressive. And as always, I'm happy that we continue to get these little emails of people subscribing to Section 1904. They make me happy every time, Darren.
Me too. And again, we are where we are positioned currently for John and for me. I think this is about establishing a rhythm and establishing a bit of flow and establishing just some regularity to the podcast. We want people to get used to it. We need to get used to it. Just because it's in our iCalendars doesn't mean that we're here every morning sharp at 10 a.m. Real life gets in the way of stuff. John has stuff going on. I have a wife who's currently sitting on an airplane on the tarmac in Las Vegas. She has no idea what time she's going to take off. They have some sort of mechanical issue, so that's wreaking a little bit of havoc with my schedule for the rest of the day. She pulled what we affectionately call a Ryan Leaf, although I don't think it's fair just to say that this was only Ryan Leaf, who would jump on a flight, go to Vegas, party for 18 straight hours, hop a flight back to San Diego and go to work. But my wife had a friend who used to live in San Diego who's relocated to Denver, who had some business in Vegas. So my wife and a friend hopped on a flight yesterday morning, flew to Vegas, companion pass Southwest Airlines, hotel points, mostly taken care of.
Yeah.
Just kind of rocked out all night, got back on what was supposed to be an early morning flight, but now their plans have kind of been screwed. So I'm sure many people in Southern California have done that. I only did that once. I will say I only did that once in my radio career and I don't think I ever talked about it either. But I got done with the show. The show was done 3:00. Got on a flight, flew to Vegas, met a friend, partied all night, got on a 6, 7 a.m. flight back, maybe 2 hours sleep, tops. Got back, got in the car, straight to the radio station, maybe stopped home for a shower, I don't quite recall, did the show, went home and crashed. I think I only did that once in 20 years where I just went on like a 24-hour bender in Vegas and then worked my way back into the show. Breakfast burrito, a couple cups of coffee, caffeine pills, whatever it takes. Get through the show. Hey, Marty, book a bunch of guests. I got to get through this 3-hour radio program. Book everybody. I want a guest every segment here, and then you just kind of fake your way through it. But yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only person to have done that, not just in radio, but in Southern California.
I have done a version of that. I can tell you exactly when it was. It was about 7.5 years ago because my wife was with me and pregnant. But we did watch some summer league action, stayed up pretty much all night with some friends in a house that they were renting. And then scooted on back. But, don't threaten me with a good time, Darren. You want to go do a trip in Vegas and come back and see if we can survive on breakfast burritos. It's a lot easier to do a 40-minute podcast than it is a 3-hour radio show.
I know.
We could talk about everything we do in Vegas. You did famously tell me a story that I love to tell, which is the first time you were driving to San Diego. Didn't you stop and get a party in Vegas, and then you had to throw up outside of the car on the way down or something like that?
Well, that was when I moved from Connecticut or New York, drove across the country. First night stop was in Columbus, Ohio, where Ian Fitzsimmons was the king of local sports radio there. So people that remember Fitzy from the radio program hung out with him for a night. because he was a big time swinging dick radio host in Columbus. So, he had all the inns, all the bartenders. So we went out and had a blast with him. Second night, I think we made it to Topeka, Kansas. Did you ever see, what was the movie? Real Topeka People, man. What was the movie?
I don't
know. The music movie. Come on.
Music movie.
Yeah, Cameron Crowe. Come on. Almost Famous. Almost Famous.
Almost Famous. Thank you.
Yeah, Real Topeka People, man.
It's been too long since
very
I've
boring
seen it.
place. Very boring. Couldn't get out of there quick enough. Then Denver caught the Rockies and saw the Rockies, and then stopped in Vegas. I think my wife at the time, my first wife, might have been sick, or maybe you're confusing different trips. One time, my current wife and I went out there for New Year's, and we spent about 10 hours driving back from Vegas to San Diego.
Oof.
And we made it all the way back to Mission Valley where we were living at the time. And as soon as we got off on Friars Road, we were living right off Friars.
Yeah.
As soon as we got off there, we had to pull into the parking lot of P.F. Chang's where she threw up. So I don't know that I've ever had a moment where I had to puke on the side of the road, but
I think it was the ex-wife on the trip from Vegas to San Diego the very first time. I think the story, the kicker at the end was like, this was her introduction to San Diego, like welcome to your new home, and she's just throw it up on the side of the road.
Yeah, our truck overheated somewhere on the 10.
Brutal.
Because we had no air conditioning and a brutal hangover, so you're super dehydrated and there's nothing left to sweat out. So yeah, we're lucky we didn't get hospitalized, but hopefully she'll make her way back. But we've all done that, and I'm sure, by the way, I've not done that. I mean, I don't plan to ever go to another NFL game, but I will say, having an NFL team in Vegas, I'm sure people have kind of figured out how to fly out on Sunday morning, catch the early games, go to the 1:00 game if the Raiders are playing against somebody that you want to see, or if you happen to be a Raiders fan, or if you just want to go, and then hop on an evening flight, and you likely could be home and in your bed by 10 or 11 o'clock.
So,
which, you could do all sorts of gambling and all sorts of eating and drinking and whatever else, and you can make your way back there and probably be in mostly tip-top shape for work the next day.
Darren, this was funny. So I was in Vegas, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, for a cousin of mine got married at the most famous little wedding chapel and whatever, that thing. It was a whole affair. We had a blast, but we were there over a weekend, right? And it was a Raiders home game against the Chiefs, and on Friday and Saturday, all the hotels, the Strip, filled with Chiefs fans. I mean, wearing their Mahomes jerseys everywhere, their Kelsey jerseys everywhere. It felt like the Chiefs had just infiltrated the city. Sunday morning, it was like a tidal wave coming into the city of Raider fans. And the thing that I liked the best was there was so many of them showing up. Like, I'm getting coffee. It's like 7 a.m. I'm getting coffee at the Starbucks in the hotel or whatever. And a ton of them are rolling in with golf clubs, because I think it was a Sunday night game even, or at least it was an afternoon game. And I was like, okay, they have this locked down. They come into town, they go play a round of golf, then they go to the football game, then they go home. This is brilliant. But yeah, no, if you're ever there on a Sunday morning, you will see the tide of Raider fans come flying in for those games. And then, the visiting fans are either already there because they want to spend the whole weekend, or I think some more of them popped in on Sunday morning. But yeah, it looked like a fun time.
Yeah, I'm sure you've sat next to strippers on the flights home too, right?
Yeah,
that have come
undoubtedly.
straight from the club, right?
Yes.
We all kind of know what's going on there. You mentioned Padres and SDFC, which I do want to spend the majority of time on.
Sure.
But just before we started rolling here, I was taking a quick scroll through social media, John, and happened to stumble across a bunch of clips of the LA Dodgers, the World Series champion LA Dodgers, visiting the White House. I don't know. This is a bit of a change up, because I don't think that you and I had discussed this.
No.
Planned on discussing this. I've said this on the radio years ago, and so long ago that I don't even remember who the president was. So somebody will say that this is president-specific commentary, and you can interpret it that way if you want. I don't have any issue with that. But I do remember saying, I think if I was running a professional sports team, I would just have a blanket policy of no White House visits at all. None. I don't care really who the president is. And I'm not trying to say this president versus other presidents, because, let's reverse engineer this here for a second. I remember a time, maybe it was Barack Obama. Maybe. I'm not sure. But there was a hockey player, and I don't know much about hockey, but I remember very distinctly there was a hockey player who said he didn't want to visit the Barack Obama White House. So he didn't go. His team won the Stanley Cup, and he didn't go. And I remember thinking, wow, well, okay, I guess that's his choice. But of course, we were in the early days of social media and political commentary. I mean, like, what did we know? Like, what did we know what it was going to turn into? We didn't even know what bots were back then. We didn't even know what bot farms were way back when. So, you know, the discourse there was mostly manageable, even though at times it could be a little unsavory. But, you know, I just remember thinking, yeah, I mean, if one player doesn't want to go, and I didn't take roll on whether all of the Dodger players did or didn't go. I tried to look for as many as possible. The clips that I saw on social media were pointing out that Clayton Kershaw shook hands with Donald Trump.
Of course.
That Shohei Ohtani shook hands with Donald Trump.
Not
that
shocked.
Mookie Betts shook hands with Donald Trump. That Max Muncy shook hands with Donald Trump. That Dave Roberts, who was once upon a time criticized by Donald Trump during the World Series. I don't know if you remember that.
No.
Because he pulled Rich Hill out of a baseball game. Donald Trump took to Twitter to say, what is this manager doing? He's ruining the game, or blah, 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 blah. And, you know, they had to ask Dave Roberts about that after the game. I always remember the look on Dave Roberts' face. People can probably find this clip on YouTube. But he was asked, hey, you know, Donald Trump was critical of your managerial decisions. He's like, what? Like, what do you want me to say? Like, I just lost a World Series game, for God's sake. You're asking me about the president who's questioning why I took a picture out of a game? I mean, for fuck's sake, what do we... So, you know, I always remember that moment. I was like, what in the world? So I said this years ago, I was like, I just think I would not put my players in that position, whether they chose to go or didn't go, or supported the president, didn't support the president. I probably would just have a blanket policy that, you know, because of course what happens today, it's not as simple as, hey, we're here to recognize the World Series champs, and wow, what a season they had, and he kind of fumbles awkwardly through some of the terminology that he clearly knows nothing about. Not just him. Most presidents don't, right? They've got other things going on. Unless you're talking about like NBA teams or baseball teams going to the White House for Barack Obama. Like, what do most of these people know? What does Joe Biden know about basketball?
Well, I mean, Obama had the basketball background, and George W. had the baseball background.
Yeah.
So, like, we had some presidents that were involved with sports. Yeah,
Absolutely. But I just always thought to myself, like, you know, because if one person doesn't go, then that person has to answer political. Like, why didn't you go? Why didn't you do this? Why, you know? Yeah. And what sort of commentary is that? I don't know. Is it, I mean, is it worth it to go? I mean, if the Padres win the World Series this year, like, is this going to be us in a year's time potentially talking about whether the Padres should or shouldn't be going to the White House? And then you get writers and media people. I like Dylan Hernandez of the LA Times a lot. I consider Dylan a friend.
Yeah.
I don't know if you caught his piece a couple weeks ago.
No.
But when the Dodgers announced their decision that they were going to go to the White House, he wrote a whole story about it in the LA Times. And, you know, it was quite clear. He's like, I feel like this is a betrayal of Los Angeles. You know, just look at how California votes. Look at the way the county of Los Angeles votes. Look at everything that's happened in the city. You know, look how controversial the city has been with the wildfires and the commentary, et cetera. You know, and some of the stuff that's being said, perhaps not exclusively by the president's party that he represents, about California not getting any federal funding and on and on. You know, maybe this is something that should have been thought through a little bit more. And, you know, of course, there's a predictable backlash to any sort of commentary to the such. Anyhow, what do you think?
Okay, so I actually have a story, and then I'll give you my thoughts. The story is that I think it was a little bit over a year ago. It was like last January, so about a year and 3 months ago. I was producing NBA podcasts for Yahoo Sports, and one of the ones that I was producing was The Good Word with Goodwill, hosted by Vinny Goodwill. And Vinny, you may or may not know, is an African-American man who takes a lot of pride in, you know, Black history and Black power. And, you know, and we had a lot of fun with that on the podcast, especially when we got to do episodes on like MLK Day and stuff like that. So in January of last year, the NBA reached out to Vinny and said that when the Denver Nuggets were going to visit the White House, I believe it was in February, so it was during Black History Month. And so the White House wanted to bring in NBA podcasters that were Black during Black History Month to interview members of the Denver Nuggets organization and members of the White House, which may or may not include Joseph Robinette Biden, about this, about the Nuggets visiting the White House. And this was going along. Like, we almost got to the point of buying tickets and booking hotel rooms. And then someone paused and they were like, this is a Black History Month thing? They were like, what? Like, if you looked at the players on the Nuggets last year, especially at this time, I think Aaron Gordon was injured at this time. And so it was like Jokic, who like didn't even want to go to the White House. Jamal Murray, who's Canadian and didn't want to go to the White House. Christian Braun, who's very white. Like, and eventually they were just like, this does not meet the spirit that we wanted to do it in, which was highlighting, Black NBA podcasters, content creators, and tying that to the White House, which was trying to build more, sentiment amongst Black voters for the upcoming election and whatever. And the plug was pulled. But the thing about Jokic just like not even wanting to go, and Jamal Murray being like, I'm Canadian. What do I give a shit about this president, right? And it was like, you started realizing that like for some guys, it does not matter at all. But for some guys, it matters a ton. And for like fairness sake, like LeBron James and Steph Curry will tell you that, and Kevin Durant will tell you that a highlight of their career was meeting Barack Obama, right? Going to the White House and meeting Barack Obama. And like the Padres win the World Series, a highlight of Manny Machado's career might be meeting Donald Trump. Like, he's been pretty open about, at least in the past, about being someone who supported Donald Trump and Donald Trump's policies. And for the sake of fairness, I think teams feel like, well, we let these guys visit their president, we got to let these guys visit their president. But I'm with you. Like, get the messy politics away from my team, right? That it doesn't need to be there. But again, if the Padres came out and said, even if we won the World Series, we're not going to go visit the president, what you then create is a situation where you're telling someone like Manny Machado, like, yeah, it was cool, a couple presidents ago, but now that things are real political and Trump is, lighting the world on fire, we don't want to be associated with him, even though he's your guy. And there's a sense of fairness there. So like, I understand the teams that are like, yeah, sure. Like, the guys who want to go can go. The guys who don't want to go don't have to go. You also have to realize that like for someone like an MLB baseball player, the people that they consider to be like hugely famous are not other baseball players. It's movie stars, it's musicians, and it's the president of the United States, right? Or like foreign dignitaries, like the French president, the Chinese president, right? And so for
you think baseball players are elevating heads of state as the kind of people that they themselves consider famous?
Yeah, but like not in terms of like they're interested by it. I just think they're really impressed by it. I think a head of a state is very impressive to a baseball player. And so I think some of them are like, man, I have the chance to shake hands with the president of the United States of America. Why would I pass that up? How many people get a chance to shake the hand of the president, stand behind him? And so some people want to do it, some people don't. I'm kind of a freedom of choice person, but yeah, I mean, if it was my team, I think I would try and be like, guys, we don't want to get into this. Like, it's maybe we'll invite him to a ball game, right? He can come and sit in a suite with someone or whatever, but like, we don't have to stand behind him while he tries to explain what a pitcher is in baseball.
Right. And it's not even that. Like, if it could just be strictly limited to, hey, we're here to honor the World Series champs or the Super Bowl champs or the NBA champs, and we're going to strictly keep it to the subject of achievement and all these unique stories and teamwork, right? And all the things that we love about sports. Yeah. Because it's not that, right? Yeah. It's not all this other stuff. It is not the Panacan. It's not the, it's not that. It's that. But you're also dealing with a president who struggles to keep it on message, right? Like even today, 100%. Just as an example, and maybe there's other examples of other presidents doing this sort of stuff, right? But one of the clips that I saw, he kind of, Donald Trump kind of rambled on about, the cost of groceries again and inflation, and like right behind him are the Dodgers, and Andrew Friedman is right behind him. It's one of the recognizable faces. He's the president of baseball operations. So think AJ Preller, and he's right behind. Donald Trump while he's talking about egg prices and he's talking about groceries and he's talking about inflation. And it's just like, what are you supposed to do when you're there? Right? Because he's got these lines and he's got these people in the room who you can't see on camera who are going to applaud when he talks about whatever accomplishment he's proud of at the moment.
Yeah.
Right? Which, again, apply it to whatever elected official president that you want to apply it to. I don't recall that happening with other teams and other presidents, but I might be mistaken. Maybe we have a larger magnifying glass at this particular moment. And like, what are you supposed to do if you're in the background and you can hear all these other people applauding? Like, do you applaud? Do you not? Because somebody's going to zoom right in on that and be like, well, what's his problem? Or, oh, look at this guy. He's clapping like a trained seal, right? Like, what are you supposed to do if you're in the background and he goes off script and he starts talking about grocery prices and how he lowered inflation and people in the room start applauding? Are you supposed to applaud even though you're not even sure that it's factually accurate? Or are you supposed to just do nothing? Like, you know what I mean? So like, I just would not want to put any of my people in that position at all. I think I'd rather avoid it altogether. But
I just want to say one more thing on this, and then we can get off it.
I do want to just read a little bit from what Dylan wrote too, but go ahead.
There's arbitrary lines here though, right? Like I was talking about the arbitrary lines of if someone wants to go or someone doesn't, but like the other side of this is like, okay, the MLB team that wins the World Series gets an invite. The NBA team that wins a championship gets an invite. The NFL team that wins a Super Bowl gets an invite. Does the NHL team that wins a Stanley Cup get an invite? Does the MLS team that wins the Supporters Shield get an invite? Like, no, it's basically just the 3 teams a year. And like, I think this is meant to be a PR thing for the president to humanize him. And Trump, I think, doesn't use it as such, to your point. He just kind of used it as like another press conference, right? But like, I like when the presidents use it as an excuse to show off, like, hey, I'm a real person with real rooting interests, right?
Right.
Like, Obama was president when the White Sox won the World Series, and like, go watch that one compared to all the other ones.
He's a White Sox fan, right? Yeah.
He's a White Sox fan. He's like gloating around on stage and going like, it was my dream to be president, but my real dream, like, there's a humanizing factor to it, and like, if Trump had been like, hey, look, I know I'm here to celebrate the Dodgers and everything, but you got my Yankees and I'm still mad about it, right? Like, that would be something to show that he cared about something. And I think it's supposed to be that, like, hey, we're going to humanize the president, blah, blah, blah. But I think he's just missing the mark as per usual.
Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of teams get invited. I'd be surprised if the Yukon Huskies didn't get invited. They won the national championship over the weekend. I think usually the collegiate champs get an invite.
The football team goes. Yeah, I don't know if
the basketball team. Oh, absolutely, they do.
Yeah,
I bet you whoever wins tonight between Houston and Florida will get an invite. The Eagles, I guess, were not going to go. Then they reversed course.
Yeah, they changed their mind.
And maybe this is why. This is what Dylan Hernandez wrote. This was about a week ago. When their moment came to show the world what they were about, they were served a fastball over the middle of the plate. The Dodgers whiffed. Stupid me, thinking that they'd overcome their penchant for choking when they won the World Series last year. That's pretty strong from Dylan. Ooh. The Dodgers have accepted an invitation from President Trump to visit the White House April 7th, the franchise of Jackie Robinson bending the knee to hateful forces similar to the ones they challenged when breaking the sports color barrier. How pathetic, how spineless, more than anything, how hypocritical. 8 days after the White House visit, the Dodgers will celebrate Jackie Robinson Day. They will insinuate, if not outright say, that they're more than a baseball team. They will portray themselves as leaders of social progress. They will be full of it. The Dodgers are embarking on the path of least resistance, and that's not how leaders do. Leaders don't cower in fear of ignorant extremists, no matter how many of them there are. Leaders do what is right and deal with consequences. I do want to point out that the president of the team, Stan Kasten, did say, and he did say, everybody here agreed that they wanted to go. So if the whole team agreed that it wanted to go and it was a team vote, then I suppose that's that.
Yeah.
But I thought the term that Dylan used, the path of least resistance, was an interesting one, John, because, what is the path of least resistance here? Is it to say you don't want to go and deal with the criticism that comes, or to go and deal with the criticism that comes with? I don't. That's an interesting term, an interesting thing to think about when it comes to this, isn't it?
There's a podcast that I listen to that I won't shout out, but I'm going to steal an idea from, which is, there was someone on it last week who was like, everyone's like, oh, these law firms are acquiescing to Trump because it's the path of least resistance, right? They're like, this is the thing that's going to help us out the most if we don't stand up to him and fight against him. And then they were like, have you seen any evidence that he's willing to show any kind of favor to anyone who acquiesces to him? Like, literally over the weekend, Elon Musk, who essentially bought him the presidency, was like, I don't know, these tariffs are really bad. I really think we should just have free trade with Europe instead. And it's like, even him, he bought the presidency for Trump. And like, even Trump's not going to go like, you know what? You're right. And since you've been helping me out, I'm going to help you out. Like, he doesn't help out anyone. He hasn't helped out anyone. So I don't know that there is a path of least resistance. I think the idea that there's a choice here is maybe a silly one. Like, if you don't go, you'll get attacked by his supporters. Mm-hmm. But if you do go, it's not going to help you in any way. You just don't get attacked by his supporters. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting day to be there, like I said, because you do sort of feel, I get it, most people listening are probably Padre fans, but you do sort of look around in the background and you start thinking like, like imagine Jackson Merrill and Jake Cronenworth standing in the background while he's carrying on about inflation. And you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to expect from these guys while they're standing there, because everybody's going to find the angle and they're going to be like, well, what was that reaction all about? Like, what did you think about what he was saying about the cost of eggs, Jake Cronenworth?
Well, and like the Japanese stock market just cratered, right? Like, even worse than ours, just absolutely cratered in the last 24 hours. And it's like, if you walk outside in Japan, my understanding is if you look around you, you're going to see some pictures of Shohei Ohtani on billboards. Yeah. Does he really want to be attaching himself to the man who is cratering his country's stock market? I tend to believe not, but who knows? Maybe he's like, Shohei does seem to be like a get along and go type of guy. Like, hey, if the whole team wants to go, Freddie Freeman told me he wants to go, so I'll just go along with it. But that feels like a bad business move from him, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know. Like I said, I think what you're going to get often on this podcast, John, and it's something I've learned in life has developed for me is I just find myself the older I get just saying, I don't know. I don't know.
We don't know everything.
I don't have the answers. I don't know what you're supposed to do. Yeah. I honestly do not know what you're supposed to do in this situation, but that is what they chose to do. And I'm sure today, if you're a fan of the Padres or any of these rival teams, you're probably like, oh, of course, what a bunch of creeps. All right, speaking of the Padres, dropped 2 out of 3 over the weekend. They win on getaway day. We'll get our first taste of what it looks like in Sacramento. The Sacramento A's against the Padres a little later on. I watched an entire game from start to finish. It was the Sunday game. I caught a bit of Friday, but bailed on it kind of early. I had some stuff going on there. It looked kind of sloppy. When Manny Machado's making an error and Xander Bogaerts has a play there at short, hey, listen, it wasn't gonna be their day every day. But 7-game win streak snapped. Then they drop Pivetta Saturday, win a back and forth odd game where there was a picture, an image of a goose shitting on television, which I was not prepared for. This game had a little bit of everything on Sunday, and the Padres win it. I think I'm going to return to my normal April default setting, John, which is not to wake up and necessarily just be drawn into the standings every minute of every day, because this is when you realize there's 152 more games or whatever it is. There's 150 plus games left to go, and living and dying with playoff odds and standings and games back and all the such. It just, I feel like my usual April setting is, I'll start paying attention to the standings in June, and I'll watch the games. I'm constantly going to be looking for something to talk about, but I'm not going to go overboard anymore about the results of a series. They still have time to make it a 500 series, which I suppose is the cliche thing to say, against the A's, who have gotten clobbered in a couple of these games in a minor league park in Sacramento. But I don't have any strong emotions by anything that happened over the weekend in Chicago.
I don't, except that was, so Friday I missed the whole game. I was driving. Saturday, I think I caught a lot of it. Pivetta looked terrible, but it's fine. Sunday's game was just funny to me because neither starter could throw strikes, like, at all. Kyle Hart, that's his name, right? Kyle Hart, who I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to do this. Mudcat was trying so hard to not reveal how terrible Kyle Hart was pitching, but every once in a while it would squeak out there. So my favorite one was he threw like 7 balls in a row, and then finally he throws one, and Don goes right over the middle of the plate, strike one, and Don just immediately goes BP fastball. And then like he paused and he was like, it was 88 down the middle with no movement. It's a BP fastball. And then there was another one where he realized what I have seen from Kyle Hart is that he's got a really good sweeper, but he just couldn't get it in the strike zone. And so he starts throwing the sweeper because the fastball he can't locate, and the sweeper's going all over the place. He finally gets one over the plate. Again, this is like 7 pitches later. I think Kyle Hart threw like 37 pitches and like 6 of them were strikes. And he finally throws a sweeper for a strike, and Don's like, and there's the sweeper in there for a strike. And Mudcat's like, yeah, you don't want to leave that one up there. The batter kind of wishes he swung at that one, basically implying like he hung it right over the middle of the plate. Kyle Hart looked terrible. And honestly, the Cubs pitcher did not look that much better. It was a real messy game. And, you know, the Padres with all their grit. I saw Kevin Acee this morning said there's so much grit on this team. You can see the dust coming off them.
Lots of grit squad.
But no, that was gutsy. That was a gutsy win to be down 7-3 or whatever they were down and come back, win at 8-7. Offense looks really good outside of Jason Hayward, who, whatever, it's too early for all those concerns. But speaking of too early for things, I went to the baseball reference page for the 2025 Padres just because I wanted to get an idea where everyone was at. And I opened it up, and right at the top, it says playoff odds. And since we talked a little bit about playoff odds on, I think, Friday, I noticed this. It says 81.8% chance to make the postseason. That makes sense. 8-2, right? 10.1% chance to win the World Series, it says. Which does not make sense to me. So I clicked on the link for playoff odds to dig a little deeper. And according to this, unless I'm reading this wrong, and I don't think I am, Baseball Reference on their playoff odds page, I should screenshot this before it disappears, has the Padres with the highest percentage to make the postseason out of the NL West. They have them number 1 in the NL West, an 81.8% chance to make the playoffs. The Dodgers are 78.5% chance. The Padres have a 10.1% chance to win the World Series, according to Baseball Reference, and the Dodgers have a 7.6% chance. So maybe Molly Knight was right. The Dodgers really have been playing terrible. But it's crazy to me. The Dodgers are 9-2. The Padres are 8-2, and I think in 3rd place in the division. So that's Baseball Reference. And I was like, let me validate my parking. Let me go check Fangraphs. So on Fangraphs,
yeah, that's where I am right now. I was just going to say, let's cross-check it because I have the page open.
The Padres are 4th in the NL West to make the playoffs and to win the World Series. They go from 1st on Baseball Reference to 4th on Fangraphs. And like all of these numbers are made up fake pretend numbers. But
total fake numbers.
But when they're that different, it makes you stare at both of them and go like, how? How did one draw this conclusion that the team is clearly better than the Dodgers, who everyone's like, they're ruining baseball by being the greatest team of all time? And then Fangraphs is like, I don't know, man, if they make the playoffs, that's less than 50% chance to make the playoffs at 8-2. It's insane. It's insane. What do you have to say outside of these numbers or pretend?
These numbers are pretend. I will go back to the same point that we made on Thursday of last week, which is the 1-8 Braves have a 70% chance of making the postseason, according to Fangraphs, and the Padres have less than it's a coin flip.
It's coin flip.
Less than a coin flip. So I just tend to think it's probably too early for this sort of stuff. And somehow these guys, they're probably using some sort of artificial intelligence or some sort of algorithm to just plug a bunch of numbers in there and the strength of schedule. And the strength of schedule probably is completely, who really knows what the strength of schedule is? I'm sure the strength of schedule looks a lot different because the Giants are 8-1 and because the Dodgers are 9-2. And those are at least win percentage wise, those are better numbers than the Padres, and the Diamondbacks are 5-5, and somehow the I don't understand it. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't understand it, and it's probably too early to invest any energy in any of this whatsoever, other than to point out that you can definitely find yourself sliding into one of these rabbit holes and going, look, what's all that? But again, it's April, which is why I will default to where I've always been, which is, yeah, I mean, I'll look at it. I mean, I'll be generally aware, but if you catch me on any given day, I might not know what the record is for the Padres. On any given day, I might not know. I will try to look at it just so I have it in front of me when we start doing this. You know, it's just it's a habit to get into, right? Like just to kind of, like, you kind of want to know where the Padres are playing. You know, I don't really care where they are in the standings. You know, like not today. You know, and this is another conversation that I've had for years, John, even with some colleagues. Oh, by the way, we're getting an update. Okay, we're taking off from Vegas. All right.
Hey.
So, you know, this was another conversation about these games in April, right? Because I used to work with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. And, you know, they would always say this stuff. And lots of fans would agree with this, by the way. You know, these games in April count too, you know.
I saw someone tweeting about this.
I'd be like, yeah, I get it. You know, I understand. Nobody's saying that the games don't count. But can we all agree that the games are managed differently in April than they are in September? Because they are. Can we all agree that the roster construction is different in September than it is? You're going to give people chances in April that you won't give them in September, okay? You're just going to do it that way. Pitchers you're going to manage games differently. You're going to use your roster differently. You're going to, you're going to do things differently, you know? And the one thing I always say, and apologies if you've heard me say this, I don't know, a million times before, is, you know, in a baseball game, if you give up a run in the first and the score is 1-0, you know, this isn't soccer where that might hold. I mean, it might hold up, but you know what I mean?
Probably not going to.
You've got a lot of innings to make that up. But if you give up a run in a tie game in the ninth, doesn't it feel different than giving up a run in the first inning? So, you know, I think the answer is yes. But that run counts. I know it counts. And it might be the difference. But, you know, you also have 27 at bats where, you know, you might be able to overcome this deficit. You know, you might be able to do it. And in a baseball season, I understand that they count on April 5th and 4th and whatever. And, you know, I don't believe any longer in the phrase that you can't win the division in April, but you can lose it. I don't believe in that at all. I mean, not anymore. You know, not anymore a playoff spot because we have expanded playoff fields. So, you know, this has changed everything about the sport. The fact now that we're talking about, you know, 7 teams going. So that's changed things. But it does, right? You give up a run. I mean, half the people aren't even in their seats in the first inning of these baseball games. So, you know, like, who cares if you give up a run in the first? You have all these at-bats to make it up. So, you know, if you don't win every series right out of the gate, yeah, I mean, you can always look back and remember that game? We were up 8-0. We lost the game, man. That felt like, yeah, sure. But, you know, also, like, there's plenty of time to adjust. Like you know, April is, like, in the NFL, September is sort of, it is now become, you know, it's become the preseason where you're figuring out, like, well, what is it that works and what is it that doesn't work? And we're trying to define some roles around here. We're trying to see who's who, what's what, how we're going to use this guy, that guy. How is the league adjusting to this? So, yeah, I mean, you'll just forgive me for, you know, people try to, I get it. Like, baseball's our number one sport in San Diego. And I appreciate those that are on the edges of their seats for all of these at-bats and all of these games. But, man, I just don't burn yourself out worrying about, you know, Jake Cronenworth taking a called strike 3 on Friday. Like, you know, like it was a playoff game. It wasn't. You know what I mean? Well, I think we'll have plenty of time to make up for that at bat if that really puts you in a bad mood on Friday.
So, all good points, and I'm going to read a part of AC's morning newsletter to you in response to something you said. But first, before we get off the playoff odds thing, because these are all projections, right? Fangraphs is projecting, this is why they're much lower. They're projecting the Padres to finish 84-77 with 1 win or 1 loss going in either column. But they predict about 84-85 wins for the Padres. The Baseball Reference one predicts the Padres to win over 92 games. So definitely different projection models. I will say I think that, like, a lot of the criticisms, like the valid criticisms of the roster going into the season, I think are proving to be true. Mm-hmm. I think left field remains kind of a question mark. I think offense out of the catching spot remains kind of a question mark. I think the back end of the rotation remains kind of a question mark. But they've gotten their star players to perform, right? This is the thing that they didn't have in 2023. The star players are performing, and they're all performing at the same time. Tatis is playing well. Machado's playing well. Merrill is out of his mind. And so that's nice.
Arise has woken up, 4-hit game on Sunday.
Yeah,
right?
just
I mean,
poking it through the infield every time.
Yeah, I think he's going to be okay.
I think he's going to be fine. But yeah, I don't really have other thoughts for the Padres because, as you said, like it's so early in the season. It's not saying that these games don't matter, but there's nothing we can make from it yet. We need more sample to dig through before we can make like conclusions that need action considered tied to them.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love what you've. I'll give you like a very, very pleasant surprise. It's been Gavin Sheets. Not only that he's performed, but he's performed in some clutch moments. And I do believe in clutch. Other people do not, but I do believe in for as much as modern baseball has shit all over runs batted in, I can tell you that even though it's not a statistic, let's say that a lot of front officers are sitting around putting contracts, building contracts around runs batted in. They are looking at it like situationally. How does a player perform in a situation? Does a player have a good at bat in an RBI situation? Does he have a bad at bat in an RBI situation? So, I do still think that there is a little bit of value there. And this is a guy who, whether it was pinch hitting opening day, whether it was the opportunity most recently against the Cubs, he's just, he's a good player. Listen, it's 9 games, but still. It's been a very nice, it's been a pleasant surprise out of the gate. Some of the other players have performed probably to expectation or below. Some of the, you mentioned Hayward and Gurriel.
Yeah.
But, in terms of Sheets, it looks like something you might be able to have around for a season. I mean, it looks that way now, but, that could also change by the end of the week. And that's when you look up at the scoreboard now and you see, look at like Luis Arraez, look how quickly his numbers on the scoreboard changed just from a couple of days to the next. And when we're still in that mode, it's just hard to say anything indelible about any of this.
Yes, I will say as far as Sheets goes, like I tend to think there's always going to be like one Preller special every year, a guy that it's like, well, this guy was supposed to be good, but he never reached his potential, and they bring him in. And it's like, whoa, he's almost reaching his potential. Where did this come from? And whether it's Profar, Alfaro, there's been some pitchers that I'm not remembering. I guess Suarez,
Peralta.
Even when they got Cronenworth in that trade, like Cronenworth was a guy that the Rays were like done with. Like they didn't have any future plans for him. So a lot of times he grabs these guys off the scrap heap that at one point had potential, and then they lost the excitement around them. And I think Sheets can be that guy, and I'm excited to see if that's actually true. Did he play a little bit of outfield over the weekend? Did he play left field in one of these games? Am I crazy?
I thought I saw him out there as well. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, he's big guy to be moving around in the outfield, but I think I saw him make a catch and he seemed fine. I
always like to when like you have a guy like a Gavin Sheets come in here, and you're like, oh, like all these guys got to write about something. AC's got to write about something. And it's like, well, they're the hitting coach, right? Like they Luis Rodriguez, like they saw something and they thought, and I'm always like, yeah, what are you saying about like the previous team that you're on? Like nobody else could see this little tiny thing, this little tiny adjustment.
To be fair, it is the White Sox. This was the beginning.
Pivetta. Same thing with Pivetta. They were like, oh yeah, Ruben Niebla thought he saw something in Pivetta.
Moved him to the other side of the mound.
Right. Was it that simple? You just had to put him on one side of the rubber. Like then what the fuck is the Red Sox problem? Nobody ever thought about that.
No one even tried it. No one even tried it. This was the beginning of AC's email this morning, by the way, just as a counteract to your these games don't really matter that much. First, good morning from the site of my long layover, which I feel like he starts 90% of these newsletters with that same line.
Right. And you picture him like literally typing this on his phone.
Yeah, it's sitting at a gate. Mike Schilt experiences games. The italics is on experiences, so I would say it that way. Every one of them, win or loss, close or blowout, he is locked in just about as if he was managing Game 7 of the World Series. He forgot the word of. His post-game demeanor is more NFL coach than baseball manager. It's all competition. Like, the idea that Mike Schilt is taking an April game at Wrigley Field as serious as a Game 7 of the World Series might be a problem. It might be a problem. Like, We used to have conversations about this, about how managing in the regular season and the playoffs are different, and that's why it took Bobby Cox so long to win a title. That's why Joe Torre won so many, because he was willing to manage differently with the Yankees in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. That's when you get the 2-inning saves from Mariano Rivera, and you get all these dramatic starting pitchers coming out of the bullpen and all that. Game 7 of the World Series. I mean, just laying it on real thick for April baseball.
It's also just not true, because there's been other games where Mike Shildt has managed where he's pulled his starters out of the games.
Saturday!
And you're not going to do that in the
Saturday!
7th inning of the game. So,
2 days ago.
I don't know. Some of that stuff. Listen, there is a huge bromance between AC and Shildt.
I'm not surprised.
And it's been addressed on radio. Like, they play pickleball together. Like, it's, I think it's a little bit beyond, reporter and subject dynamic. I think it's a little bit broader than that. And I'm not trying to sound like a hypocrite here, because obviously I've had relationships with front office types and coaches and players in the past, so I'm not knocking it. Now, then again, I also don't operate under the umbrella of journalism. But I think if it hasn't been obvious already, and if you missed that when we would talk to Kevin about it, there is a little bit more to it than just simply, well, he's the reporter, he's the beat reporter, and this is the guy he covers, and there's an affinity there. It does, and I did ask Kevin about this, that they play pickleball and who knows what else. So, you can expect that sort of stuff from Kevin. He's very, very fond of Mike Shildt, as are a lot of people. And lastly, on the Padres, just because I was texting with a buddy with the team, who's with the team, because they landed in Sacramento, and we have a mutual friend, and I just like, hey, what's the vibe like? He's like, good clubhouse, just, real good clubhouse, positive clubhouse. And that's the stuff that's more important than what somebody's numbers are on April 7th. So, again, that energy, like that type of energy, I think that's way more important than 8-2 or whatever. So again, it's setting up to look like it's going to be an incredible division, but that's the way it looks today. It's a snapshot in time, and it might change by tomorrow. All right.
Hey, wait, real quick. Cause you said you watched yesterday's game.
Yeah.
Did you see
That's where I was sitting there pointing my phone at the screen so I could capture this goose shitting during Bob Scanlon's report.
I think this was around that time, so I hope you saw it. Did you see the play where the two Cubs outfielders almost ran into each other, Ian Happ and Pete Crow, whatever? The thing I took away from that was that they almost killed each other, right? Like Don and Mud were like, whoa, okay, they just narrowly avoided the Mike Cameron, someone's face got ripped off play. And Ian Happ catches the ball, throws the ball in, turns his back to Pete Crow Armstrong or whatever, and walks away. Yeah. And the kid is looking at him like, holy shit, we almost just ran, and completely ignored. Not like, oh man, I'm so glad we didn't. Nothing. I had never seen disgust from teammate to teammate like that before, and I
thought the same thing.
Oh my god! And so when you were talking about good clubhouse, I'm like, yeah, you don't. Well, I mean, it's 2 weeks into the season, but you don't see shit like that from this Padres team. But I saw that and I was like, wow, I didn't know Ian Happ was an asshole, or he just really hates that guy. But he was pissed.
I saw the same thing, and obviously it's not something we'll dive into, but I was like, whoa, right. like Ian Happ was motherfucking him on those way back to left. He's like,
yeah,
that
was
you
wild.
could just sort of see the look on his face, like what the hell,
yeah,
I almost getting, and I don't know, was it conclusive that the center fielder was calling him off? I don't know that I saw that conclusively. The other thing I noticed during the broadcast. Who's selling this team commercials, man? How do you watch the game? Do you watch the game on MLB? Like, did you just buy it, or do you have a confession to make? Are you watching these illegally?
No, it's okay. So this is the thing,
because I just paid for it. I don't even know how I did it. I subscribed for it for a couple of years back, and now it just automatically renews. So it's just there.
I subscribe to a service. It's not illegal. It seems illegal. It's not illegal. It's called Uzu. You can go to uzzU.tv if you want to look into it. I get a handful of channels that I can stream, and then I get every baseball game, basketball game, NHL game, NFL game, and college football game. They all show up. And a lot of the times it's through, like when I turn on the broadcast, I get the Padres.tv, whatever, but I think I get it through MLB.tv, and it usually comes with the thing that says like commercial break when they're in a commercial break. So I don't usually see commercials. Sometimes you get a weird feed where the commercials are there, but usually I do not. Are the commercials real bad?
Well, I mean, they're just sort of like non-existent. It's like an ad for like MLB Network.
Oh,
So it's like some studio show or some
fillers.
highlight of some other
Fillers.
team. They're showing like a historic moment from baseball.
Yeah.
But the one that they kept showing yesterday was Don Orsillo in his dinghy floating around in San Diego Bay. I know exactly where Don is because I ride my bike past there all the time.
Sure.
It is, Don lives in Coronado Cays, which is
Mm-hmm.
a really, really cool and a hidden gem of San Diego County.
Rid my bike past it.
Great spot. You're
Yeah.
right on, if you're on the bike path on your way from Imperial Beach, where I live, up to Coronado. I was just through the Coronado Cays yesterday afternoon,
Yeah.
as you might be able to see on my Instagram story. And, they just like sent Don out there with his cell phone and this Hawaiian shirt to say, "Hey fans, make sure you come to the game on April 15th or whatever day it is,
To get your
and
Hawaiian
you
shirt.
you can get this free shirt." I'm like, this is
They
this
didn't
is
have
Padres,
budget for a cameraman.
right? This is what Padres television has turned into, which is again, part of it is like, oh, what a cool time to be alive. You can just film a commercial with your iPhone floating around in a boat.
Sure.
But the flip side is like you're also asking your play-by-play guy to film a commercial while he's just floating around in his boat.
How many takes do you think he did? Just one, right?
I don't know, dude. It takes me a couple of takes to get some of this stuff going right. So I don't know. You see it every break, and you're just like, does anybody sell advertising for this? Like, maybe this is why that nobody makes any money on television here.
For the one take, I just meant like Don probably like looked at his script, memorized it.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, I got the shirt on, I got the script. Let me look at it. All right, cool. Do the one take, and he's like, all right, that's done. Like, text it to whoever he needs to text it to, and then just starts fishing.
Right, he's over it. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'll give you 30 seconds because I'm Don Orsillo. I'm out
Sure.
here on a boat and I'm wearing this shirt. And he's like, yeah, ahoy and aloha. And he's like, I'm done. Don't text me again. I'm out here trying to fish. All right, Saturday night. Wow, Saturday night. I just want to say, like, before MLS ever arrived in San Diego, there was a handful of clubs that I paid close attention to, just because I was like, they're doing things right.
Yeah.
Obviously, over the last 7 years, is it? 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 8 years, it's been LAFC. I was at LAFC's first game, but as an expansion club, I paid attention to them because I figured at some point, we would be an expansion city. And I just thought LAFC did so many things right out of the gate. I understand they're a rival now and all that sort of stuff, so I don't want this to turn into LAFC loving, like Dodger loving, that I see all the time on social media. But, you paid attention. You're like, wow, like, and not only do they do a lot of things right in marketing, they've had the success to back it up. They've got, since they've been in the league in 2018, they've had the most wins, the most goals, the most points. They're really good. They're really successful. Beating them is a big deal 2 weeks ago. But the other club, and I think it was a real turning point for Major League Soccer, when the Seattle Sounders, John, came into Major League Soccer in 2009. I will tell you why I was paying such close attention to this. Because the way that the Seattle Sounders became an MLS club was in part because of the Seahawks.
Yeah, they latched on.
Because the Seahawks were trying to get a new stadium in Seattle.
Yeah.
And were having trouble getting the financing for it because they were relying on a public-private partnership, right? Sounds familiar. And so what had happened, and they wrote a book about this, and I read the book about it, and I interviewed the author, was they decided that us going alone as an NFL franchise wasn't going to be enough. It just wasn't going to be enough. People were sort of skeptical of the Seahawks because they tried to relocate once. People might remember the Seahawks actually purchased some property or rented some property in Los Angeles and moved their offices to Los Angeles. So they were going to try to win the race for Los Angeles before we ever suspected or ever realized that the Rams and the Chargers and the Raiders were all involved with this. But they were a team that was looking ahead to maybe it was leverage or maybe it was real. I tend to think it was real. But they were flirting with Los Angeles, which is the point, and it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths up in Seattle. If you understand the city, you can understand why that sort of stuff just ain't going to fly. And what they decided to do was partner with a soccer club that had already existed in Seattle. It's a great thing about the Seattle Sounders. Their history, all those three clubs up there, I guess in Cascade, Vancouver, Portland, and Seattle, all have history that's longer than Major League Soccer. MLS came into be in 1994, 1996 first season, but it was a result of the World Cup being here in 94. You got to have a domestic league, 1996, 30th season, right? You've heard us talk about this before.
Yeah.
But the reason I paid attention, John, was because the soccer club, which had aspirations of being Major League Soccer, partnered with Paul Allen and the Seattle Seahawks to get it across the finish line to say we're going to build this stadium for our NFL team, to keep our NFL team, but also to elevate Major League Soccer. And I know that I spent, I don't know how many years saying, well, why aren't we doing that in San Diego? Why isn't fucking Dean Spanos doing that? Why can't we figure out a way to say it's not just going to be an NFL stadium for anybody that's like, well, it's just an NFL stadium. And you're like, well, it might be also with SDSU. And people are like, well, I don't really know about that. And then you're like, well, we could also get this nice thing called MLS. And I always was like, that sounds like a great idea. Like, that's a way to get a lot of people on board. And you're satisfying a lot. Anyhow, obviously it didn't happen. But like, I've been paying attention. The point is, I've been paying attention to the Sounders for a really, really long time. That they had their bid accepted in 2007. 2009 was their first season. They've been around. You can see it on the crest that it says 1974 because that's the first year that the Seattle Sounders started playing competitive soccer. They've been indoor. They've been outdoor. They've done a little bit of everything. They've been USL. They've just been, they have, we don't have a lot of club history, relatively speaking. I interviewed Patty McNair for the midweek show a couple of weeks back. Patty McNair played for Manchester United, which has been around since the 1870s.
Yeah.
Patty McNair played for Middlesbrough, which has been around since the 1870s. Patty McNair has played for some West Brom maybe. They've been around since the 1870s. And I made it a point of saying, what's it like playing for a club that has months of experience compared to a century plus of experience? And we don't have a lot of club experience, relatively speaking. But if we do, you would point to the Seattle Sounders and be like, that is history. So when they come to town, like I like. This is odd. Like, this is incredible. Here are the Seattle Sounders, which have finished top 4 in the Western Conference every season but one since they've been in MLS. They're a team that expects to win trophies every year. 2-time MLS Cup, 4-time U.S. Open Cup, Supporter Shield, CONCACAF Champions Cup, first MLS team in like 25 years to win a Continental Championship. So, there's a lot. Like, there's a lot that comes with the Seattle Sounders. And you're catching them at a time where they're a bit down. When you play them, sometimes more important than who you play, right? When you play them. But to win 3-0 against Seattle is just on back-to-back weeks at home against LAFC, which has been a standard since 2018, since they've come in the league, and Sounders, since they've been in the league in 2009 and everything they represent. It's like, it just feels like it's more than wins, John. Like, it just feels like it's bigger than just 3 more points in the win column and finding yourself sitting second, third in the Western Conference standings. You're beating the kind of clubs, that really, really matter in North America, that really matter not just in MLS, but are almost recognized on a continental, international level. And like, man, and they just ran them off the pitch in the first half of the game. Second half was kind of boring. They were just trying to see the game out. But to see goals from Jeppe Tverskov and Anibal Godoy, and of course to get Chucky Lozano to get him with his first goal in that first half, to see 6 goals now scored in the first halves of these games in back-to-back weeks, like, man, there's a lot of good things that are being said about SDFC across the soccer media, and they are earning the praise that they are getting. But it was another incredible environment on Saturday night, and they are flying.
They are flying. I mean, they scored a goal in like the first 60, 90 seconds of the game. And I forget if I had even switched over to the radio broadcast at that point or if I was still on the TV broadcast. And whoever it was just like, Seattle has been caught flat-footed. They've been caught flat-footed. They did not realize. And like a similar thing happened with LAFC last week, where it was just like, they don't expect SDFC to come out this aggressive. They expect it to be a slow build throughout the half. Then maybe they'll get aggressive at the end of the half or the end of the game. And STFC is just like, no, we'll take a big lead and we'll defend it. And that's a little scary. Them defending leads gets a little scary for me because they're not great at it. But I'd rather them defending leads than trying to come back while down. They've been awesome. The points you've made, I kind of made on, I think, Sunday morning when I wrote that, the 3 big teams going into the season that I was like, let's see how they match up against them were the Galaxy, who are, champs.
Terrible.
They're champs, and they've
champs.
They've won a lot of championships. The Sounders won a lot of championships. LAFC, kind of the model right now. And SDFC has beaten all 3 of them soundly. Like they beat Galaxy 2-0, they beat LAFC 3-2, and they beat Seattle 3-0. Like they're just so impressive. And I don't know if Chucky finally getting a goal was great. Chucky is turning into like a Luka-like figure for me. He just never stops bitching at the refs, man. He just never stops. And like I remembered your whole thing about like Irving Lozano is the guy off the pitch, Chucky is the guy on, and I'm like, oh, that's like Chuky's the asshole, right? Who's never going to stop screaming at the refs and whatever. And like, he might get in trouble for that here and there. But just what a fantastic goal scorer. I kind of wanted the one where he tried to pop it up over the goalie's head and he just missed it. I wanted that one to go in, but he played great. I don't know if Dos Santos is getting the credit he deserves. I mean, he's having an incredible season, just an incredible season. But yeah, they're awesome. I don't think you could ask for a better start to a franchise. They're 4-2-1.
Mm-hmm.
Draw goes in the middle. 4-2-1.
Yeah, no, this league does it weird. I mean, it is. You're right.
Win,
Draws
draw,
draw, right? It's like win loss. Every league. There's a lot of leagues that do this differently.
It's so weird.
We get confused on it as well.
4 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws.
Correct.
They're in second place in the Western Conference. They're one of easily the 3 or 4 or 5 best teams in the entire league. Can't say enough about Mikey Veras. Can't say enough about the players, the backline, the keeper, all that. But not what I wanted to talk to you about, because I already wrote about that, and we can only celebrate for so long. What's going on with I'm not going to have the pronunciation of this, Kevin De Bruyne.
So interesting. You know, I would just quickly point out, you know, like you said, you can't celebrate forever. Sitting on 14 points, we were trying to put this in perspective for expansion clubs, but and I'll get to De Bruyne in a second.
Yeah.
Because I had the chance to interview the sporting director, Tyler Heaps, before the game. So this was on the pregame show. So I don't know how many people had a chance to hear it. I don't even know if it's archived somewhere. But I did say, you know, that I'm learning a lot about this league too. So I read a lot of things. You know, I'm trying to read a ton. I'm trying to, you know, to digest as much as I possibly can. And it feels like everybody talks about how good this team is for an expansion team. And, you know, wow, they really defend well for an expansion team.
Yeah, it's like
it's
like he runs well for a fat guy. One of those backhanded compliment.
They press really well and counter press really well for an expansion team. And you know, I said to him, "Are you trying to be a good expansion team, or are you just trying to be good?" You know, and he's like, "Yeah." He kind of admitted it was funny. He's like, "I was hoping we'd fly a little under the radar, but now a lot of people are saying some really, really good stuff." So we're you know, they're starting to get this kind of treatment where other coaches are saying things like this. Well, we got a chance to beat one of the best teams in the Western Conference. You know, we got a real chance. This is a major opportunity for our fans to see us get an opportunity to beat one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And they are currently, John, on a mathematical trajectory to set an MLS record for most wins in an inaugural campaign, but that is held by the St. Louis City side that won 17 games back in 2023. But anyway, to your point. So I also talked to Tyler a little bit. I said, hey, man, there's some crazy things floating around out there on the internet. So Kevin De Bruyne is you know, a generational midfielder. He's played for Manchester City for the last decade or whatever. He's an amazing player. And it has run its course at Manchester City. I don't know how many people watch Manchester City and Man United on Sunday. Incredibly, what a snooze fest. But not the question. And he's been linked to SDFC for months, that, you know, there might be some opportunity and there might be some mutual interest. And Kevin De Bruyne might be looking at going to Saudi Arabia where they're going to offer him, you know, who knows how much money. And maybe there's a connection with NYCFC because New York City Football Club is connected to Manchester City. It's part of the City Group. So, you know, who really knows? And I think a lot of people thought, you know, when that social media post went up from Kevin De Bruyne's official account saying he was leaving Manchester City at the end of the year, I know a lot of people sat up in their chairs, right? Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh man, you know, what does this mean? Does this mean Kevin De Bruyne is coming here? And even I fed into that a little bit. And a reporter who works for CBS and, what other website does Tom Bogert work for? He had a post that said, Kevin De Bruyne is not part of SDFC's plans. He's just not part of their plans. And I think that disappointed a lot of people because people had thought, wow, watching this guy, even, you know, if he's in his mid-30s, he'll probably run circles around a lot of these midfielders in Major League Soccer. Like, who wouldn't want to watch that? No, he's injury prone, and that worries me as a designated player. You can't have your DPs. You can't have those guys being kind of injury prone. Then again, maybe he wouldn't be injured if he was playing in a league that was this league and not the Premier. So you can go back and forth on that. I think I would love to watch Kevin De Bruyne. But they're not interested, and they're not interested because he's going to make a ton of money wherever it is that he goes next.
Yeah.
And I don't know that SDFC is going to see the value in that. And then the other name that popped up over the weekend was a German legend from Bayern Munich. And this was in some of the, I know, John, you wake up every day checking the Bavarian newspapers, just like I do.
Religiously.
But his name is Thomas Müller, and he's been a midfielder at Bayern Munich forever. He's an amazing player.
Is he on the national team? I feel like I remember him from their World Cup team.
Yeah, 100%. And he's retired from national team duty. He's reaching that stretch of his career, and he's very much like De Bruyne, where he's been a club legend. He probably will build a statue for him one day, and he is now at the end of the road with Bayern Munich. So what's he going to do? Well, he's not going to go play for another German club because it doesn't work that way in that sport. You don't just go and like pick up and go play for a rival team.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to, you don't want to deal with that sort of stuff. You're not going to go play for another big time European club because what happens if you come across Bayern Munich, right, in Champions League? So he's looking around too, and it might very well be MLS. Now there's an established link between LAFC and Bayern Munich, so maybe they're the favorites. But there was a report that SDFC offered Thomas Müller a contract, and I asked Tyler Heaps directly. I said, "Is this true?" I showed him the actual post that was on my feed. And I said, is this true? And he said, it is not true. We are not interested in Thomas Müller.
Wow.
Now, I didn't ask him that on the record. He's just like, no, he's like, I don't need to keep talking about this. So, we didn't go on air with it, but I just asked him and he's like, no, he's like, we're not in Kevin De Bruyne. We're not in Thomas Müller. So I don't know where these things are happening, but he's like, I'm also tired of killing these, but I said, hey man, it just comes with the territory. You're a sporting director.
Yeah.
So I don't know who they're interested in. He said there might be another minor deal or two just before the
deadline.
The window closes on April 23rd, because other windows aren't open in other leagues. MLS does everything differently for now. We'll see. But if anything is significantly going to be added, it's going to be in the summer transfer window, which is in July. Yeah. So, you might see a minor trade. You might see like an under 22 kind of player brought into the mix. You might see a loan deal here over the next couple of weeks. But he made it sound like, there's nothing too earth-shattering that was coming roster-wise. And hopefully that stays the same because, if they have to change their behavior, it's probably because somebody gets injured.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want that, right? That's like Milan Olaski. He was probably brought in here because Marcus Ingvartsen's going to be out for a period of time. So you bring the San Diego kid back home. He had been playing in Denmark. But, hopefully nothing happens that will cause his team to go out there and try to do something. But you're limited in what you can do because you can't go pluck from European rosters. You have to find somebody who's not currently employed, and that sort of situation. You can't do all that much. Your hands are kind of tied because of the timing of the MLS transfer window and when it closes. But, I think it's exciting that we're even talking about Kevin De Bruyne. I think it's exciting that we're even talking about Thomas Müller. I think it's exciting that some German newspaper, for whatever reason, or some German website is even saying that SDFC is interested in Thomas Müller.
On the radar.
I think it's kind of exciting. Even if it's a source of aggravation for the sporting director, that's good internet fodder. You know this as well as anybody. Sometimes, transfers and trades and those kind of things, for us, it might be annoying for a sporting director, but for people that are pushing podcasts and pushing content, those things track better than game recaps.
Yeah, they do. Speaking of the biggest episode of this podcast was us reacting to Jackson Merrill's contract extension, which is just paper. It's just he just signed a piece of paper. But yeah, these types of things get people excited because they can imagine Kevin De Bruyne playing in an SDFC uniform or Thomas Müller or someone else. The next time look, Messi ended up on Miami, and that was kind of predetermined. But the next time there's a player not at that level, at a top level that's still below Messi, that wants to come over to MLS, like SDFC will get consideration as one of the landing spots, and that's awesome.
And De Bruyne is, maybe he's obviously a couple of Messi because everybody is, but in terms of who's available and who might be willing to make the jump, I mean, he is up there as well. Can I just say one quick thing, because I did math and I don't want my efforts in math to go wasted. So the first 2 goal scorers on Saturday night are our captain, Jeppe Tverskov. That was his 17th career goal. So he's not known for scoring goals.
No.
He's known for being the drummer of the band. He's there to set the rhythm. He's the guy that's going to pass the ball. He gets the most touches. He's an integral part. He's played every minute of the season so far. He's an amazing player. He could have been the man of the match, quite honestly, just because of everything that he did. And I'm not saying that Chucky didn't deservingly get it.
Yeah.
It was obviously Chucky, but
there could have been
if you were going to give it to Jeppe, I don't think you would have had a ton of pushback. 17th goal, John, in 291 professional games for Jeppe. According to my math, that's one like every 17 minutes, every 17 games. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know that I'm doing this right. 291 divided by 17, right?
Yes.
Okay, the total games divided by how many goals? Is that the way you do this?
Total games divided by how many goals, yeah.
Okay, so according to my iPhone, that's like 1 out of every 17 games. So it's pretty unique when it happens.
And that's like, in MLS, that's like 2 a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, because you play 34 times.
Yeah.
Anibal Godoy scored the second goal.
My guy.
Now, this is a dude who, again, I mean, he's not exactly there for goal scoring.
He's a midfielder.
That was his 9th career goal.
Whoa.
In 242 professional matches.
Whoa.
18,500 minutes played. I have that at 1 every 27 games played for Anibal Godoy.
So one a year?
So if you had... Imagine if you could have, and this isn't a sports gambling podcast, but imagine if you had said somewhere,
parlay.
What are the odds that I got Jeppe and Godoy both scoring in this match? Guys who score 1 out of every 17, 1 out of every 27. And this is to tell you how good these guys are, that they don't even, you're not even relying on their goal scoring and they're still starters and playing 90 minutes every match. You would have gotten some pretty good odds on that one, wouldn't you? I mean, we all thought during the pregame, we all pretty much guaranteed that Chucky was going to score.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I ever would have shown up saying, let's make some predictions here. It's going to be Jeppe and Anibal are going to be your first 2 goal scorers. But man, that was so that's pretty rare. If you were at that game, I don't know that we're ever going to see something quite like that again, man. But it was great. And off to Colorado they go.
I do want to give a quick shout out, because we do sometimes talk about the radio broadcast. I want to give a quick shout out to Warren Barton, because, early on in this game, in the first half, he was calling out Chucky and Luca De La Torre.
Yeah.
And saying the defense is swarming around these 2 guys. They are trying to shut them out of the ball. And he's like, and the longer you don't touch the ball, the less engaged you are. You'll find yourself kind of sitting on the sideline watching the game instead of actually playing the game. And he like literally started challenging them at one point. He was like, go get it. I know they're trying to keep you from getting it, but go get it. Don't wait for it to get to you. Don't wait for someone to find you. Go and get the ball. And Chucky, when he, had his almost goal and then his goal, that's pretty much what he did. He went and he got the ball.
On the assist, that's what he did too. He went there on a short corner from Luca. He went and got the ball and dribbled into the 18 and then centered it and found Jeppe.
Exactly. And he had another one where he did the same thing. He just couldn't get the ball through the little like defensive wall that was in front of the goal. But he went and he got it, and then they saw results. Luca, you could see, tried a couple times and was really frustrated by it. But I don't like the overwhelming bias of some TV and radio calls that are team produced. SDFC, I believe, is kind of involved in the production of the radio broadcast, and I appreciated that maybe 2 of the biggest stars on the team were getting called out by Warren as like not just like they're playing bad, of like, you gotta want it, you gotta go get it, you gotta be like, show everyone you're the player that they think you are, type of stuff. And I thought that was cool. I thought that was cool that he did it, and then I thought it was cool to see it in real time. I actually saw on Sunday, I saw Mudcat giving some sort of analysis that then like kind of immediately came true right afterwards. And I was like, we don't give these guys enough credit for how good their analysis is sometimes. We just kind of move on to the next one. But Warren was really good, and, Mudcat's always pretty good.
Yeah, and you know who else? I'll throw another name in there as well, because I was thinking about it during the broadcast, and I'm glad you circled back to this. Bob Scanlon.
Yeah.
I mean, Scan is a guy who you can learn from every time.
Yeah.
I think him and Mud, they have, their roles are a little different in that, Mud's a personality, Mud's an entertainer. Mud's there. He's one of the,
But I think the analysis gets lost in the
sometimes.
Mud's my favorite because he's so funny. He's so entertaining. He's willing to joke about himself. He's willing to deal with Don's like fat jokes and everything. And it's like, no, like he broke down when the Cubs pitcher couldn't throw a strike and then the pitching coach came out. Mud was like, watch, he couldn't throw a fastball for a strike. The pitching coach came out. He goes, I bet you the next pitch is a breaking ball. The next 5 pitches were breaking balls, and they were all strikes. And Mud was like, see, I know exactly what the pitching coach was telling him to do because I've been in that situation. And it's like, every once in a while, I'm like, wow, that's right. Mud's not just here for entertainment.
Right. But I think if you were to ask people, and this is not a slight on him because I agree with what you're saying, most people would say, well, we love Mud because Mud is this gregarious personality.
Yeah.
And I think if you're saying like, what are the things that you like most about Mud? It'd be like, I'm always entertained, and if you were to ask me again, this is not a slight, and you were to say, hey, like, what do you like about listening to Scan? I'm like, the first thing is I'm always learning, so like, I think it's a good combination to have, but Scan can be very entertaining. Like Scan's got some, he's got some amazing stories, and the same thing for Mud. Mud's got good analysis. So it's, it's a good balance between those two guys to have them both involved in the broadcast. And I think you're definitely, as a viewer, you're definitely getting out of the broadcast what it is that you need, a little bit of entertainment and, some information. And I think the two of them play off well against one another. So, yeah, I mean, it's real good. So I'm glad to hear that about Warren, because I noticed the same thing. I was like, I actually was, asking a friend of mine, I was like, it looks like Luka and Chucky are just a little disconnected. And it's like, yeah, timing. It's just timing. It's a timing thing. It'll happen. Keep in mind, it's 7 games into a 34-game season. It's an expansion club. They just started playing with each other 10, 11 weeks ago. It
does make me feel super duper old and out of shape when I see like someone on the back line will have the ball and they just make eye contact with Luka and Luka takes off running. And then they just never pass him the ball. And I'm not saying they never pass, but like that happens a million times in a soccer game. But when you notice it, you're like, oh, that's a lot of running for nothing. Like my legs would be I'd be so frustrated. And I've seen Chucky do it too, where he runs like every time. And it's like after 7 or 8 times, you're like, you got to give him one just to make it worth it for him to run.
Well, it's funny if you want to go back and watch the highlight from the second goal. Yeah. So, this is a ball that Chucky gets out to Anders Dreyer on the right side. And Dreyer finds himself in all sorts of space, right? Yeah. And then Dreyer's, he's dribbling into the 18, and there's 3 different players that are charging towards the net. And if you're just going to like freeze the frame there and be like, now what do you think happens next if you hadn't seen it? One of those players is Oni Valakari. The other player is Chucky Lozano, and the other one is Hannibal Godoy. Yeah. And you're like, so what's going to happen here? You're Anders Dreyer. What are you going to do in this moment? We've seen Valakari's been a revelation. Yeah. Chucky, you could see how much of a priority it was. Like, we got to get Chucky, we got to get him on the score sheet. Like it's just missed time. We got to get him going. And if you watch it, the ball goes to Godoy and Godoy scores. And we talked about how infrequently that happens. Yeah. If you look at Chucky, he's just like, I just ran the entire length of this field thinking I was going to get this return pass. And I didn't get it. And he's like, man, I'm just trying to get back into form and get on the score sheet here. Like, come on. So it was very funny to watch his body language because at the end of it, you could just tell he had that moment, John, where he's like, I set this up. I ran. I thought I was going to get it back. And, all right, Godoy, high five. I still got to go out and get mine. It was very funny to watch the second goal if you go back and watch it.
Yeah, it is funny to watch those guys just take off when they don't get anything. And you're just like, you see them building themselves back up. Right. Okay, I got to do that again next time.
He's like, come on, man. This guy's only scored 8 times in his entire career. What are we feeding him for? Get me the ball. But thankfully, he got his goal. Otherwise, I think they just would have left him out there until he got it. Like, I know that they were trying to monitor the minutes, but he was so close and had the assist. It was like, we were like, he has got to get a goal. Or he is he might not sleep tonight. Not that he's a bad, selfish guy. I'm just saying he's a goal scorer. Goal scorers want to score goals.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure he's sitting around going, man, we got one dude who never scores. We got another guy who scores even more infrequently than that. And our forwards are setting these dudes up. Like, we got to eat out here, too. So I'm glad that they were able to make him the man of the match. And he got the luchador mask on, which is a first for the man of the match at Snapdragon Stadium. So, all right, well, 6:30. I was going to say, John, national championship game tonight, but I know you're not as big into basketball, college basketball. You gonna watch Houston and Florida?
I am gonna watch, and this is why I actually did watch a fair amount of both of these games over the weekend. Just because there was no Padres game going on when they were going on. There was no STFC match, so I was like, I'll throw it on. I'll watch. I watched a lot of watched more of Houston and not Houston, Auburn and Florida. And the thing I knew about Florida was they have some kid on their team who's like a giant. He's like 7'7" or whatever.
Yeah.
I never saw him on the court. I don't even think he played. They're an incredibly well-coached team. I don't even know if they're particularly talented, but they're an incredibly well-coached team. They actually reminded me of like a Coach K Duke team, although those teams eventually were filled with talent. But just everyone was connected and they were playing really well together. It wasn't a lot of like, get this guy the ball and get out of the way. Bruce Pearl just continues to be like the modern day Calipari. He's just like, he's greasy and you can't trust him, but he's just a real good basketball coach. And it was actually fun to watch that game with Charles Barkley there because he's just like such an Auburn guy. And he was just like, you could see he was living and dying with each play. And that was really fun. So I watched that. The Duke thing, I mostly just watched like the last 5-10 minutes of the game, which is all I really needed to see. The foul against...
Oh, like the last 90 seconds is all you needed to see.
The foul against a flag was an absolutely terrible call. So that sucked. But, Duke didn't hit their shots. They hit their shots. They're in the final tonight. Now they're not. Houston, Florida. I will probably turn it on. I think it's the same time as a Padres game. So I'll probably have one on the big TV in the living room and one on the smaller TV kind of over by the dining room. I am bummed because for whatever reason, I think I was busy, did not get to watch the women's championship game. And I happen to love Paige Beckers. I think she's like a real special player. Like LeBron and Durant kind of came into the NBA around the same time. And like, because of that, no one really pays attention to the fact that Kevin Durant's one of like the 5 best players of all time because LeBron's one of the 2 best. I think that's going to happen. I think Paige Beckers is going to be like the WNBA's Kevin Durant, where everyone pays attention to Caitlin Clark. She's the Steph Curry. She's the LeBron James. She's one of the 2 best players of all time. And Paige Beckers will be one of the 5 best with like a better personality, but I don't know, maybe no rings or whatever. I'm glad she finally got her championship. I'm excited to see what she can do in the WNBA. I wish I'd watched that game, even though it looks like it was a blowout. Yeah, that's it. I watched more college basketball this weekend than I was planning on it, and I don't regret that. It was pretty good basketball.
Yeah, I think women's hoops is having a moment, whether it's at the collegiate level or WNBA level. And you were talking about Paige Beckers. I mean, I hate what happened to Juju Watkins.
Oh,
because she is, but all of a sudden now, like the profiles of some of these players are getting to the point where I wouldn't suggest to everybody here that it's appointment television, but you're like, here's a reason to watch this, as opposed to, well, it's going to be a competitive game and this team is ranked 2nd and this team is ranked 5th or whatever. Some of those things just kind of sell themselves if you're a sports fan that's looking for something to watch.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, I want to, oh yeah, I've heard about Paige Beckers. Like I want to watch her play. I've heard about Juju Watkins, who again got hurt. But I want to watch them. I do. I want to watch these kind of players here. And
Juju tore her ACL, right? She's out all next year, probably.
Probably.
That's such a bummer. She was so good.
Terrible. I mean, and she was considered maybe better than both players or all 3 players who we've already mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's having a little bit of a moment. I've kicked this around a bit. I don't know. Like, would a WNBA team work in San Diego? Like, I would want to watch it, but would a WNBA team work in San Diego? I don't know the answer to that.
They when the WNBA started, they kind of played around with this idea of like, we're going to fill markets that the NBA is leaving behind. And they went into some strange markets. This is why there's a team in Connecticut. But they went into some strange markets. And most of them kind of failed and they moved on. And now they're mostly in markets that have NBA teams, and they just try and like cross market and try and get fans to be fans of both teams. So I don't know if the WNBA would even consider that. They might just go like, we tried that. It didn't work out. But I don't know, man. Some of these teams, some of these fan bases get something really special going. If you get a good player in there and you form a bond, and then you're just selling out an arena every night, I would certainly be there watching.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the most important question is, would the Padres social media team wish them luck in their inaugural season?
Absolutely not. Why would they?
I don't know. I mean, Duke can't lose in more heartbreaking fashion for me. Anything that inflicts the maximum amount of pain on the Duke Blue Devils, sign me up. I got out of the match on Saturday night, and I saw that on the timeline. I was like, good. God, sorry I missed that. I should have recorded it.
There's a day and age where that ending to that game would have led to Cooper Flagg going like, screw it, I'm coming back for another year. Like, I can't have it end that way, but you just can't anymore. Maybe he can. It depends on how much money he's making at Duke, I guess. But he's going to, that's how his college career is going to end now. That sucks for him. But,
yeah, well,
whatever.
We all make choices in life, John. Could be worse. You could be sitting here just panic reloading your 401k every minute.
No,
I think
thank
it'll
you.
be okay. Yeah, no, thank you as well. All righty. I guess that's a wrap. I'll be rooting for Houston, by the way, not just because it will make San Diego State basketball fans feel good that they beat this team, but I do like Kelvin Sampson a lot. I thought he got a bad deal at Indiana, so I'm a Kelvin Sampson fan. So I'll be rooting for them because why not? And so. I don't know that that'll work out. I'm not that emotionally invested in it. Hopefully it'll just be a good basketball game. But all righty, I think this might be our longest podcast.
Probably. It's been fun, though. We had a lot to talk about. There's even stuff we didn't talk about. We can get into the influencer conversation we were having off air. We can get into that tomorrow.
Okay. Yes, influencers. I love learning all about influencers who are going to sporting events.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm also now just seeing that there's a lot of commentary from the Dodgers White House visit today.
Of course there
so
is.
I'll have to play a little catch up on that.
Maybe we can grab some audio and play it on tomorrow's show.
All righty. Hey, thanks everybody. Thanks for listening. Hope you all had a great weekend. One thing I'd like to do is do a mailbag show. I've always privately wanted to do a mailbag show.
Oh, really?
Where we have people email us. We'll work on that.